Many are celebrating the capture of the man thought to be the Golden State Killer after the suspect's trail turned cold decades ago. However, privacy advocates are raising the alarm, warning the tactics used to track down that suspect may have chilling unintended results. One America's Chris Pocock explains.
It may sound like something from the hit dystopian Netflix show Black Mirror. But it's in fact reality. After decades of being on the loose, the Golden State Killer was caught after a distant relative submitted their DNA to a genealogy website. Authorities used certain genes in that submitted DNA to match DNA at a crime scene and finally cracked the case.
A sample from the East Area Rapist Golden State Killer was used in genealogy sites, and from there a family lineage was developed, and from that a lot of work was done by detectives and, as I say, building the trees to find the relationship that he may, ultimately we led us to Mr. D'Angelo. And from that point, once we kind of were led to him through this, then the samples were collected surreptitiously from it, which then matched, we now know, the East Area Rapist Golden State Killer.
While the results of that breakthrough caught international attention, privacy advocates are concerned as more Americans turn to genealogical sites such as Ancestry and 23andMe to find out more about their family.
It's the Wild West. It's unregulated, and there's no court order that's needed, and it can be as simple as a subpoena that's issued by law enforcement or a grand jury or a prosecutor's office, and the information can be readily accessed.
In recent years, California has been pushing the envelope when it comes to using DNA to solve cold cases. In 2010, authorities reviewed the DNA of a man convicted of a felony weapons charge and determined his father, who had never been convicted of a crime, was a serial killer known as the Grim Sleeper. At the time, California officials praised law enforcement for using genetic indicators from the state's database of felons and connected to someone outside of that list.
I think going forward, this is going to be a very important investigative tool for police everywhere where we have a serious crime, where we have no further leads.
While it was nothing new for the case to rely upon DNA to capture the killer, it set something of a precedent. It was no longer needed to have a suspect's DNA and their name, as long as you had the DNA and name of another family member, a new scenario some have called genetic surveillance. That same technique was used again in November of 2012, when investigators tracked down the roaming rapist in Sacramento using DNA from his brother, who was also in prison on sexual assault charges.
This was a perfect marriage between technology of modern policing as well as old-fashioned detective work, as you will hear. And it did not happen with just our agency or one agency alone, but it was through first notification and technology of the Department of Justice office and their DNA program.
Some experts believe genetic information is being accessed by authorities far more than is being disclosed.
But I suspect this is happening much more frequently, and that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
And that information may be being accessed without some genealogical companies even being made aware. Such was the case for DNA website GEDmatch, the open-source DNA database used by a relative of the suspected Golden State Killer. In a statement, the company said while it was not approached by law enforcement about the specific case or DNA, it's important for users of the site to be aware about the possible use of their genetic profiles by police. Meantime, other genealogical sites have spoken out about their data being used by authorities. In a 2016 blog post recently retweeted by 23andMe, the company noted it's been asked by officials to turn over data from 5 of their customers and successfully resisted each request. Ancestry has similarly said it doesn't share its data, though it notes on its customer consent page, quote, "Ancestry DNA will never disclose your data to insurance providers, employers, or law enforcement, unless compelled by valid legal process." Such was the case in 2014, when the site admitted it released a customer's DNA to police in response to a search warrant. As it becomes more common for officials to use genetic data from genealogical sites or elsewhere, some privacy advocates are calling for more restrictions to be put in place before everyday crime solving becomes just another episode of Black Mirror. Chris Pocock, One America News.
We can use your help. Call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call today.